Okay. I really love gardening in shade here in central North Carolina. It can get pretty hot and humid in the summer, so it gives you a good place to go and get some respite. And one of the groups of plants that I really like gardening with in the shade are ferns, because they tend to be pretty much deer resistant, at least. Now, there are a lot of ferns out there, and I am no fern expert. But one group that I really have fallen in love with are the tongue ferns. And they're some of the most unfern-like ferns you can grow. We've got a bunch in the J.C. Ralston Arboretum, and they're called tongue ferns because they have a tongue-like shape for most of them. They're very thick and leathery, very tough plant, and they grow and spread by rhizomes right kind of at the surface and just below the surface. In the wild, you see them growing on rocks and tree trunks and growing as epiphytes. In the landscape, they're really good growers if you can grow them on a slope or somewhere where they don't sit flat. They don't always like sitting flat in the garden. So I've grown them up kind of where there's a log in my woodland. I'll plant them up above that or just below that on a slope. Seems to work well. We grow a lot of them here. We've been experimenting with them, and here are a few that we have, a few of the many we have. This is one called Tachiba Korayu, which has these wonderful indentations all up and down its serrations and carnations all up and down the sides. Gives it kind of a little bit more of a ferny feel. This one is Shishigashira, which refers to lion's mane, and it's a crested one. It has mostly regular sized tongue fern kind of margins, but then at the top it splits into these little fingers and crests. Again, gives you an interesting texture in the landscape. This one I really like, and this is one of the best growers for me in my home garden, as well as here at the Arboretum. Seems to be one of the most vigorous. This is Hiryu, or Hirayu, and it, unlike the Shishigashira, its tip tends to be pretty typical, but all along the sides its margins come out into these long lobes that really look fantastic on the garden. This one seems to be just really outstanding for us, and one of the better ones to grow if you are growing it flat. Now, those are all Pyrrosia lingua, the true tongue ferns, but there are other species that are out there. This is one, Pyrrosia drakeana, which has a very dark upper surface with the veins a little bit more prominent than you would see in Pyrrosia lingua. On the back, it's really a dark rusty brown. A lot of the tongue ferns, especially when they're young, will have some fuzz on the back sides, but this one really holds on to that and really makes a nice texture as it grows in the garden with all those fronds sticking straight up. Another one that is much less quick to grow for us is this one that we collected in Taiwan called Pyrrosia polydactyla. Polydactyla refers to the many long lobes, finger-like lobes on there, and it looks kind of like hands when it's out in the wild. In its best forms, you'll see it growing on rocks and walls, and these lobes will be as much as 6 or 8 inches long. It gives a very graceful appearance. So if you like ferns, or you have a deer problem and you have some shade, you might want to think about trying some of these tongue ferns. They can be a little hard to get a hold of, but if you go to mail order nurseries and specialty fern nurseries, you can often find quite a few of these different species and forms of Pyrrosia.